Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're going to talk about and the EU, but NATO is in a world of deep and serious trouble. It's falling fast. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And just remind everybody, rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com/Garland Nixon. I'm on Rockfin also. Thank you very much for following me there, hitting the like button to ensure that in case they throw me off of YouTube for any reason, that you'll still be able to find me elsewhere and we'll still be able to hang out. All right, let's talk about NATO. Elena McKee says, Europe is falling apart, and you are correct. But today we're going to talk about NATO and what's going on, because NATO's at the heart of this, right? What is NATO? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Initially, it was supposed to be a military alliance to protect Europe from the Soviet Union. Even from the very beginning, they always had to lie. They always had to create an environment of fear. If you study what happened after one of the things that happened after World War II, the Russians were basically tearing up the train tracks. They were going home. They didn't want any trouble. They wanted to, they were taking they had taken a certain amount of land, and they were going to keep it. And they were going to keep it mainly because they felt as though that the U.S. was going to encroach on them, and they had some imperial. Stalin certainly had some imperial inclination, shall we say, at least from a local perspective, and he wanted to own the countries in and around. They call them the satellite countries, so he wasn't giving anything back. Okay. And at the time, if you study it, one of the things that happened was the U.S. intelligence, which had combined with Nazi intelligence, look up a guy named General Reinhard Gehlen, but the U.S. had combined with the Nazis, had taken in the Nazi intelligence, which tells you a lot right there, unit. And they were being told that the Russians were planning an invasion at any time. Well, why were the former Nazi spies saying to the U.S. that the Russians are going to invade any time? They were saying that because they wanted to be important. And if the Russians weren't going to invade any time, then the U.S. would not need to inculcate the Nazi spy organization into their organization. So they told them what they wanted to hear, and boom, we sucked up all the Nazis. Some things don't seem to have changed since then. Okay, so and there became NATO. And from then on, one of the things that the U.S. empire always had to do is create that boogeyman, and the Soviet, the Russian, whatever boogeyman. And they did that well and used that as an excuse to spend a lot of money. What's something that's interesting about that, though? Something that you should think about. Okay. During the Cold War, the U.S. said it was communism. It was ideology. There was this evil ideology. Capitalism was a good ideology. Communism was an evil ideology. And they had to stop the evil ideology because they were the good ideology. That's why they hated Russia. No other reason. It was simply because Russia had an evil ideology, right? Well, here's what's interesting. Russia's not communist anymore. And the U.S. is is more aggressive towards Russia, considerably more aggressive towards Russia than they were during the Cold War, the initial Cold War. Why is that? Because it was never about the ideology of communism. That was a fraud. That was a way to get the people in the US and the people in Europe to have a boogeyman. The boogeyman was an ideology for them to be afraid of, and that ideology was communism. As long as they could keep that boogeyman, they could keep people afraid, and they could continue to spend the hell out of money to protect them from the monster that they created. They create a boogeyman, they got to spend lots of money to protect you from the boogeyman. You're scared of the boogeyman, okay? And they could do whatever they wanted around the world all the time, just saying it's the boogeyman. But they still hate Russia. Why is it? What was it about? Well, they're not communists anymore. What is it about? Here's what it's really about. It's about hegemony. The U.S. wanted to be the premier power and control the world. The Soviet Union was a very powerful bloc also, and it was blocking from them from being the premier power and running the world. They didn't care about communism, smomunism. Of course, they didn't like the ideology, whatever the case may be. It's different. But the main thing was it was blocking them, the Soviet Union, from controlling the world. That's what they didn't like, and that's why they had to hate the Soviets. Now, where's my evidence for that? The Russians are not communist, and they hate them worse. Why is that? The same Russians, we hate them because they're communists. Okay, they're not communists anymore. We'll still hate them. Why? Oh, they're just evil. I don't know. So then obviously that wasn't it. You know, I've also often told this story. Some guy calls his girlfriend and says, "Hey, how about if I come over tonight?" She says, I gotta wash my hair. And he says, "Hey, you know what? I'd love to help you wash your hair. I'll be over at 8." She goes, "Okay, I gotta groom my dog." "Oh, dogs. I've been to grooming. I love grooming dogs. I'll help you." And she says, "I got a headache." "Great, I'll bring you some Advil." Here's the bottom line. If somebody keeps changing the reasons, that ain't the reason. It could be that she just doesn't feel that good. She's just tired and she wants to go to bed early and she doesn't want to deal with him. It could be anything. It could be something nefarious. It could be something innocent. But the bottom line is when someone keeps changing their reasoning, then they're not telling you the real reason. So if the US says we hate Russia and we have to be protected from Russia because they're communists, and then the Russians are no longer communist, and they say, "Oh, yeah, we still hate them. They're the same threat as they were before, but you told me it was because they were communists." Okay, it's a different reason now, but we hate the same people. Then that wasn't the reason. And this ain't the reason. You're not telling the real reason. The real reason is because you want to run the world and they're independent and they're powerful and they ain't going to let you do it. They're not, the bottom line, they're going to let you tell them what to do. And because Russia's powerful, a lot of other countries are starting to huddle around them and say, "Hey, we're down with Russia. You're pushing back against this big monster. We're down with you." And the US can't stand that. So the whole communism stuff was a fraud. And the whole reasoning now of whether it's Navalny, I mean, think about how many reasons. Oh, they're poisoning people with Novichok. Oh, they arrested Navalny. Oh, every week it's something new. Why is that? Because they can't tell you the real reason. They can't say to the American people, "We want to do this because we want to run the world." Now, a guy named Brian Deese, one of Biden's advisors, recently told the truth. He said, you have basically to the American people, you got to pay high gas prices as long as necessary so to preserve the liberal world order. In other words, the US being in charge of everything. He told the truth. He's the first guy that told the truth in a while. Okay, but what's the reality of NATO? What is the reality of it? Here's the bottom line on it right now. NATO's in deep and serious trouble. I mean, if you're a person, I remember when this thing first started, and I had a friend of mine who I interview on, I got a number of radio shows, and he said, "Yeah, well, the problem is," he said, "Russia made a big mistake." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because NATO's come together and it's been tighter than ever." I said, "Yeah, that ain't gonna last long." If you've been watching my shows, I probably got shows where I said that. I said, that ain't gonna last long. That ain't lasting long. NATO is, "Oh, yay, we love, we hate Russia. We're all together. We're going to fly our blue flags." I said, but when times get up, because it was obvious at the beginning they needed Russia, and I knew that the US was going to separate them from Russia, that prices were going to go up, they were going to suffer, and all that lovey-dovey crap between NATO was going to fall apart, and it's already started. Boris Johnson, by the time I get finished this video, he may be out of power. He's in a world of deep and serious trouble. Now they're saying it's because of Partygate and this and that, and some other person who he brought in who had a record of sexually harassing women. No, that ain't it. That ain't it. Ain't nothing. None of that is it. Partygate, that ain't it. None of that is it. The UK economy is a pile of smoldering ashes. That's why Boris Johnson's out the window. And it is a pile of smoldering ashes because of the Russia sanctions. They have driven up the price of energy. They have driven up the price of everything. They're making people's lives a living hell. And guess what? His ass is out. Olaf Scholz ain't long for this world. Trust me there. Draghi, he's done. Most of these leaders that are like, remember Biden? Yes, this man must not remain in power or something, Putin. Well, he ain't going to be the one that goes. So NATO, think about this. Have you heard this before? Because when you talk about supplies, an army runs on its belly, right? The people have to be fed. If you got a giant of an army with 50,000 people in one place, they got to have food, they got to have water, they got to have fresh clothes to change into, they got to have all kinds of stuff. What happens when they got none of that stuff? None of it. And they're tired and stinky and smelly and hungry. And you expect them to fight against soldiers who are none of the above. Soldiers who are bringing in fresh troops, who are eating regularly, who are living, and they're fighting a bunch of soldiers who are losing, feeling bad and hungry and tired and everything, right? Guess who's going to win? So right now, what you've got is you've got a NATO and the bloc, as it were, the NATO bloc. Right? The leaders are putting on a good, strong face. Yes, we're standing up to Putin and we will do it as long as it takes. But what you've got is a corrupt ruling elite class saying, yes, sirree. Because the people are like, hey, man, how long do we have to go through this? Is bullshit. How long do we have to go through this? And Joe Biden said it, and Brian Deese said it, and Bojo said it. As long as it takes to get Putin. Well, Joe Biden, you're sitting up at the White House. I know how you're eating. I know the way you're eating. You're eating pan-seared rainbow trout with a side of asparagus and a blackened salmon, and you're eating a prawn, and you're eating, new potatoes, and your life is good with the finest wine and drinks. You are living. So when Joe Biden or these other NATO leaders say, you have to wait, we'll suffer as long as it takes, what they mean to the people is you'll suffer as long as it takes to get Putin. And here's what they say: as long as it takes for Putin to lose. Well, here's the problem. You got about 1 billion years on your hand, because the Russians are not going to lose. They're going to win. So they're saying you have to suffer until the Russians lose, but the Russians are not going to lose. Well, that's going to come back to haunt them. That's going to be problematic. That's one thing. Number two, so they're saying, the NATO countries are saying to their citizens, you have to suffer, and it's open-ended. Yeah, how's that going to work out? It ain't, Bojo. It ain't. So they're saying to these people, you have to suffer as long, because we have this foreign policy fantasy where the Russians are going to be hurting and crumbling. They're going to be feeling bad. They're going to turn on their leader and take him out, and all is going to be well. Well, Putin's got like an 80%, literally his approval rating is in the 80 percentile class. I don't know what it is, but last I checked, it was at 83, so it's in the 80 percentile class. These people ain't turning on him. So what you've got is you've got a Russia. And let me explain a little bit why the two sides are in the situation they're in. We'll start with Russia. I said long ago, I've been saying this for probably well over a year. The last time the Russians had Nazis on their border, they lost 30 million people. They're seeing Nazis on their border. That shit's not going to happen again. I've been saying all along, they ain't going to let that happen again. I didn't know when. I didn't think they were going to attack when they did, but I knew that it's like showing a red flag in front of a bull. When the Russians saw a bunch of people with crooked crosses, swastikas, and all that old crap on their border, that's fighting words. And it says to the people of Russia, you got a problem. They want to come in and kill 30 million of you again, at least. And there's a lot more of you now than there were before. So that the percentages are right, like 12% of the population, I think it was. You're done. You're screwed. So the Russian people were looking at their leaders saying, you better do something, because these people are dangerous and they're threatening us. So what actually Vladimir Putin did, and I will be honest with you, from a perspective of a statesman, from the perspective of the leader of a country, I'm going to be honest, it was brilliant. He didn't move on Ukraine until the people of Russia were almost mad at him, saying, what's wrong? What's taking you so long? They're bombing. They've killed 16,000 Russians. They're up to our border. There's Nazis everywhere. My God, how far? He waited until the population insisted that he did. He could have moved earlier. And some could argue maybe there's an argument that they made that he should or shouldn't, but he could have moved earlier. But by the time he moved, the population was insisting on it. In business, it's what they call market insistence. He had market insistence. That's when you're selling something and people are coming to you saying, Garland, where can I buy that Banana Republic shirt that you have on? I like the stripes in it. Where can I buy that? And I'll be like, ooh, well, I got it off the clearance rack. Like I got everything else. Go to Banana Republic and look at the clearance rack and see what you can find cheap. Because that's what I do. I'm a clearance rack kind of shopper. The bottom line is he finally, and so rather than say, I'm going to move on Ukraine, he finally basically argued, okay, you got me, people, I'll do it. And he made the case to the people. So he had the Russian people behind him. Then what happened? Some things happened that are very interesting and important, and I think critical. The West went on this anti-Russian tirade, right? We basically firing Russians couldn't play sports, they couldn't do anything, they couldn't run in marathons. Basically, they sent the message to Russia: we hate you people, and we think you're lesser than we are. We despise you. Well, what are the Russians here? They hear genocide. The Russians here, if you hate us and you despise us just because we're Russians, if you ever get the chance, you'll kill every one of us. So that's then the strength behind Putin was even stronger, which means what? That means that Vladimir Putin doesn't have to say to the Russian people, you're going to suffer as long as it takes. The Russian people will say to Vladimir Putin, we're willing to deal with whatever we have to deal with, but you got to get this, you got to deal with this threat on our border. Whatever we got to deal with, we're ready to roll. We got your back. But we got a threat on our border and we expect you to deal with it. They've got people waiting to sign up to go to the military to fight everywhere. 80% of the people, over 80% of the Russians approve. So that's what you've got on one side. You've got a leader who's got an 80-some% approval rating, 80% of the people saying, hey, I'm behind this maneuver. Let's do this. And we're willing to suffer. But because Russia can create its own energy, because Russia can create its own food, because it's autarchical to some extent. In other words, they can create this. The sanctions against Russia have created an environment where Russia had to learn to make all their own things. Russia makes shoes, Russia makes clothes, everything that Russia needs, Russia can make just about, right? I saw this thing where now Russia is going to work with Iran and I forgot, maybe India, and they're going to start building some cars, designing and building cars. I have a feeling they're going to be pretty good cars. But their thing is this: screw the West. We don't need Japanese and we don't need Fords. We don't need Lexuses. We'll make our own cars. Damn you people. Because if we buy these cars, you'll cut us off and then we won't be able to get parts for it. Screw you. And they said they're going to make cars. They're going to start making cars and they're going to make some electric cars too. So the Iranians, who, let's face it, the Iranians, these are the people that created have been known to have a lot of brilliant scientists, brilliant mathematicians. They created, some parts of the some mathematical, some parts of math. They've created this, so they're brilliant people. And so what you're going to see is they're going to put together some quality vehicles that'll be for sale. And I have a funny feeling that they're going to be a low price stuff, that they're going to make stuff that's low priced. And it's going to be, and you know where the hell it's going to sell, don't you? It's going to sell in Africa. It's going to sell in Latin America. It's going to sell in Asia. It's going to sell in China. It's going to sell in India. They're going to make everything. The U.S. and NATO has created an environment where they're going to say, you guys in the West, the U.S. empire, at any given time could cut us off from all your stuff, so we're going to make all of our own. They're going to have a parallel system with cars, airplanes, everything they need, and they're going to say, we don't need to buy yours, and we're not doing it anymore. And not to mention, we'll keep our money in-house, and that way you can't steal it. So you've got a transition coming, and the people in Russia are behind that transition. They're supporting that transition. And I know people in Russia, and I talk to people in Russia, and I have friends in Crimea and Russia, and they're basically saying now their shelves are full. Things are a little high, but their things are going pretty well. I put it like this: Russia's in Russia right now. Go online and look. Go online and check what I'm saying. Right now in Russia, inflation is going down. Their economy is actually stabilizing. Russia made $24 billion, I think it is. I think it's $24 billion in the last couple months from China and India, just in oil, in energy. So they're selling at a discount. They're making a fortune. Russia is flush with money. They got so much money. They're looking for places to spend it. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to rebuild Ukraine. All those areas that they're taking from Ukraine, all those cities that they're fighting, they're going to rebuild all of that stuff. Why? Because they got the money to do it. They got the money to do it. They got so much money. They can't spend it in the West. They're selling unbelievable amounts of oil, unbelievable amounts of energy, and the other stuff they sell, like nickel and things like that, and wheat and all of those things, the prices are through the roof. Russia is loaded with cash. They're looking for a way to spend it. They're going to rebuild all of the areas of that they're blowing the hell in Ukraine. All that stuff gets rebuilt. But here was my point to all of this. The people of Russia are supporting the political leadership of Russia. They trust them, they support them, and they're willing, if they have to take a hit, they're willing to do it. Now let's go to NATO. All of this pro-Ukraine bullcrap is wearing off. It's starting to wear down. And it's wearing down because the people are feeling the heat. And they're waking up to realize that they've been sanctioned. Russia hasn't been sanctioned. The American people, the French people, the British people have been sanctioned. And they're being thrown a recession. They'll be lucky. To call this a recession is going to be like calling a tidal wave moisture. Their asses of grass, especially. We're going to get it. Don't get me wrong. We're going to get it, but we ain't going to get it like they're going to get it in the EU. Right now, the UK, they're done. Germany, they're finished. Germany's, I'll put it like this. The US, here's what's funny about this. Right now, I was looking the other day, the U.S. has more liquefied natural gas contract. They've got so much to Europe that they can't. They're trying to replace the gas that they're using from Russia. They're trying to replace it with U.S. natural gas. So you know what's happening? The U.S. natural gas is making a fortune. So Russia's making a fortune selling gas and energy because their commodities are so high. The U.S. LNG and energy is trying to replace Russia's stuff, making a fortune off of the EU. Everybody's making a fortune off the suckers. And that's what happens to suckers. That's what you do to suckers. You've heard me say it. P.T. Barnum said it's a crime before God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. So the U.S. said to the leadership of the NATO leaders, look, here's what I want you to do. You're getting cheap energy from Russia. Yeah, I want you to stop and buy it from us. It's going to cost 10 times as much, but we'll show that Putin. And they're like, yeah, we'll show that Putin. Woohoo! We got Putin now. And Putin's like, screw you. I can always sell energy and all this stuff. I got plenty of it. You're just driving the price up, you friggin' idiots. But that's fine. So Putin goes off and he's making a frickin' fortune. And meanwhile, what is the U.S. doing? Hey, you guys need liquefied natural gas, don't you? Yeah, well, but Russia's running short of natural gas from Russia. You know, I was thinking, we got a lot of liquefied natural gas coming out of Texas. Not that I was trying to set you guys up or anything, nothing like that. I mean, it's just, it's just a coincidence. Coincidentally, you guys happen to stop getting Russia's natural gas. And we just happen to be able to sell you liquefied natural gas at 10 times the price of Russia's. And we'd be happy to help you out. We got liquefied natural gas on the way and plenty of it. It will keep it coming. So the U.S. is making a fortune. LNG making a fortune off the suckers in Europe. Russia's making a fortune off everybody. And by the way, the U.S. sells oil and energy and stuff like that worldwide. And all the commodities of those, the prices of those commodities are going through the roof. U.S. oligarchs are making a fortune. Everybody's making a fortune, but the suckers in Europe. So what happens now? So NATO now, it was already a military paper tiger. If you understand what NATO has militarily, it was a fraud. It was unable to stand up to Russia, unable to stand up to anybody. The military of NATO is non-existent, basically non-existent. And the only military they have is the U.S. military, and the U.S. has light armored divisions. They don't have that kind of heavy armor and things that they would need to stand up to the Russian military on the Russian border. And if you talk to the experts right now, no, NATO could not fight Russia. People are like, hey, you think the U.S. is going to get involved? Hell no, they ain't getting involved because they don't have the military might in Russia to fight Russia. They would lose, and they would lose quick. So they're not going to do that. And what we got is this. We got NATO who's talking, they got as has been said many times, an alligator mouth and a Tweety bird ass. They got a lot to say, but they can't back it off. And then even worse, you think that's bad militarily, they're way worse off economically. Here you have neoliberal countries a bunch of countries who live off of asset-backed securities and derivatives and other kind of financial magic dreamed up on Wall Street in London. None of it's real. And the people got nothing. The people have much of nothing. They don't have savings. They don't have health care. They don't have much of a decent anything. So you are going to go up against, and because here's the reality, China's back in Russia. India's back in Russia. China's back in Russia because they know that the neocons want to take Russia out first and go to China next. Now, this is something that's not talked about. Why is India back in Russia so much? For this reason. India aspires to be a world power. They got 1 billion people. They got a lot of brilliant people. They got a lot of educated people. They have a right to aspire to be an economic world power. They have a right to that. They've got the labor force and the brilliant universities and all that. They have their certainly issues, but they look at China and they said, wow, China was poor like us and they pulled 800 million people out of poverty. We can do it too. So they aspire to be a world power. But what India knows is if we become a world power, we're going to have a bullseye on us. In the same way, now that the U.S. wants to destroy Russia, they want to destroy China because they are aspiring world powers. They become world powers. We're an aspiring world power if we get on the threshold that the U.S. is going to do everything to destroy us. So all countries who aspire, Brazil, South Africa, countries that aspire, whether they have a chance or not, they have aspirations of being world powers, are looking at this saying, we got to back Russia, because if the door is slammed on Russia and China for being world powers, and we ain't Russia or China, the door is hell damn sure slammed on us. So any country that aspires to move up the pecking order has to back Russia and China. That's why all these countries are backing Russia and China, and these regions are backing Russia and China, because they have aspirations of their own, and they see what the U.S. empire does when you have aspirations to rise. And they're looking at NATO. They're looking at the EU and saying, for God's sake, these people are destroying their own. They're supposed to be your allies, and they're wiping you out. So now what you've got is you've got a bunch of the world sitting back looking at this. Aspiring world powers are saying, we're going with them. Middle East, or most of the Middle Eastern countries are now looking, saying, well, it's obvious you dumb bastards are going to lose. We're going, why is that? We're going Russia and China. Why? They're just picking a winner. Anybody with half a brain is going to say, okay, there's two Goliaths fighting. Who's going to win? Holy crap, I'm going with Russia and China. They're going to win and win big. It's practical. It's practical politics. So NATO doesn't have the military wherewithal. It doesn't have the backing. NATO is nothing but the United States empire bringing the European powers together. And of course, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, bringing its little bit of group together, saying we're powerful and we can defeat anybody. Well, it ain't true. It's not true. They sure as hell can't defeat Russia and China together. That's out. So we're looking now at the U.S. empire. It's made its move on Russia and Ukraine, and that is failing big time. But what's even worse is their real plan was to set Russia up for an economic attack, and they are losing that far worse. And not just the U.S. losing it, but the Europeans. We've already seen Bulgaria crash. Lithuania's their government's crashed. Lithuania's government is in trouble. The Russians are pissed at the Balkans. They're going to destroy them. They're going to destroy the Balkans. I mean, economically, they're going to cut those bastards off. It's just a matter of time. And the Balkans, they got to come. I mean, let's face it. All of these trains that come from Russia, they come from China and India, and they go through Russia and they go to the Balkans. Yeah, Russia is likely to cut them out at some point. And right now, what Russia's doing, I think it's smart. They're looking at NATO and they're saying, let me see. Your governments are crumbling. Your economies are crumbling or falling apart, and they are set for certain destruction. Yeah, we don't need to do anything. Now, one of the things they did was they did the they did the oil for rubles move. When Russia did that, one of the things that it indicated to the world could see that Russia was very powerful, because Russia said, you will do gas for rubles. And the EU said, we will not. And the US said, they will not. And then Russia said, well, you ain't got to. You don't have to. Okay, not a problem. You don't have to do it, but you ain't getting no damn gas if you don't. And they said, no, we will not. We will never give you gas for rubles. How much was that again? Gas for rubles. Okay. Never, ever. We ain't doing gas for rubles. We hate you. We'll do gas for rubles. And now they're doing gas for rubles. And now Russia has said, next comes wheat. Next comes wheat. Unfriendly countries, wheat for rubles. And it's going to everything. Fertilizer's going to everything. Everything for rubles. The only reason they may stop doing it is because the ruble's getting too strong, and they may be concerned about their export market. But other than that, they're in the driver's seat because the idiots in NATO, the idiots in Europe have gone to war, economic war, with a country that they can't live without. And now, man, the economic hell that is being wrought upon Europe, and they haven't even begun to see it yet. They will be, I mean, you're talking about starvation in Europe. You're talking about homelessness in Europe. I was reading the other day where they're already starting to have Ukrainian refugees with issues with homelessness. And we talked about this. One of the issues they have is Ukraine was the poorest country in Europe, or depending on how you did it, second poorest country in Europe, whatever the case may be, it was very poor. And you got millions and millions of these people from this poor country, and let's be honest, a lot of crime going on, a lot of organized crime, prostitution, drugs, you name it. It was not a pretty sight in Ukraine. And you got all these people going all over Europe. And a lot of them saying the government's giving them money, giving them food, helping them out, doing all these things. And the people are hungry. And they're pissed. They're not happy. Hey, who the hell are these Ukrainians getting free food and we get nothing to eat? The Poles are dealing with that. The Poles are getting Ukrainized. I mean, what do they got? 9 million people in Poland, and they got like 3 million Ukrainians coming in, a third of the country. They're going to turn Poland into mini Ukraine, and there's nothing they can do about it. They are going to be sorry. Oh, we fixed you, Russia. What'd you do? We filled our country with refugees from a poor country that don't want to go back. And they're going to try to, they're going to, the funny thing about it is, they were like, we don't want to take the African refugees and the Muslim refugees. Why? They'll change our culture. Really? You're going to bring a bunch of friggin' Nazis? Now, Poland, they may not change their culture, but so much, because let's face it, there's some areas in the Balkans, most of the truth be told, in the Balkans, in the Baltic states, in Poland, most of the political entities in power trace their political legacy back to World War II and back to some faction such as the Banderites that were Nazi collaborators. So the fact of the matter is, from Poland on up, Lithuania, all that, you got a bunch of Nazi collaborating scumbags who are running these countries anyway. So, they fit right in. But the problem is, Ukraine was loaded with poverty and corruption. And so what you're bringing is a lot of poverty and corruption to your country. Good luck with that. You'll be sorry. And you're going to have a bunch of people that don't have a job, don't have a place to stay, don't have food. There's going to be desperation. There's going to be crime and drugs and prostitution and disease and all these kind of horrible things that you wrought upon yourself at a time when you can't afford to feed your own damn people. So you're going to have resentment. They're going to be pissed at their government because they're hungry and they can't pay their bills and they don't have a job. They're going to be pissed at the Ukrainian refugees just because they're there, and this thing is about Ukraine, and that will be the visual representation. Understand something: when they see the Ukrainian refugees, that will be the visual representation to the Europeans of this debacle that they have had to suffer under. Right. And so now it's going to be long term. So Bojo, all these people are done. Schultz, all these people are done. But the NATO itself, let me share something with you. I will share an article. We will look at this article. Let's look at it. And let me give you the full article. All right. Spanish lawmaker: NATO subordinates Europe to U.S. See, it's already starting. NATO also pushes war in China and enriches weapons, right? So this guy says the NATO summit was organized to enrich the weapons trade. You think? You think? Reinforce the geostrategic priorities of the United States and, above all, to weaken China. He condemned U.S. vassalage, calling for a new autonomous European security model based on respect for the global South. See what I'm saying? You're starting to hear people say, this is bullshit, man. This is crap. We are puppets of these Joe Biden. That's your leader, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. No wonder, and you wonder why NATO is crumbling to hell under Biden and Harris. And then the EU. Look at the leadership: Bojo, Liz Truss. Is Liz Truss going to be next? The woman is a moron. A knuckle-dragging ape doesn't know her ass from a hole in the ground, and she may very well be in charge. What kind of an idiot are they going to put in charge? They'll be out of the frying pan into the fire. Okay, so what you're going to have is more and more people like this Spanish lawmaker Gerardo Pizarrella saying that he condemned NATO, the NATO summit that was held in Madrid, denouncing the U.S. alliance for advocating for more war, pushing to enrich weapon industries. Listen to this: while Europeans suffer from inflation and an energy crisis. He argued that the NATO summit was not organized to strengthen the cause of peace, was rather organized basically to reinforce the geostrategic priorities of the United States. He knows what the hell's going on. It is evident that Europe needs a new model of security, but that security model has to be autonomous, a European model, not a model subordinated to the United States. Listen to this. This is it. He portrayed Washington as a neo-colonial overlord, condemning Spain for offering to surrender ourselves in vassalage to NATO. He hit the damn nail on the head. He hit the nail on the head. And you know what? You're going to hear more and more of that. You're going to see that on the streets. You're going to see signs on the streets. The people have to do something on the streets. They won't have jobs. Man, they'll be hungry. Maybe they'll eat their signs. But the European people are so screwed. And mostly they didn't ask for this. They were lied into it. Yes, or they're a bunch of idiots running around with blue and yellow signs and pins saying we hate Russia. Yes, and they're morons. But I believe this. Even those people wouldn't do that if they were told the truth. They were lied to. They've been lied to. And slowly but surely, the truth is leaking out and the pain is coming down the pike. Oh, I want to thank everybody. Look, first of all, let me add this. Thank people on Rockfin. People on Rockfin are always good to me and help keep the channel going. I see some tips on Rockfin already. Thank you very much on Rockfin. Also, hopefully we'll get some super chats here. Certainly appreciate anybody that can do a super chat, whatever you can spare. If it's $1.99, $5.99, or $20.99, certainly appreciate the super chats. Also, don't forget, look at the show notes. Garlandin at gmail.com. My PayPal is information. That's who I am. Also, I have a Patreon, which is Garland, Patreon, which is patreon.com/Garland Nixon. So those who can help to keep the channel going, and certainly appreciate it. Okay, let's continue. So what we're talking about is this. The Europeans are just starting to hit the streets. We're seeing, I forgot where it was, Denmark or something, the farmers in the streets with tractors, and the government saying we're going to bring the army in to stop them. At some point, see, here's the problem. Let me say this too. There's a big danger. There is a danger anytime the government brings out the military on the people. Here's why. Historically speaking, this is when a government completely falls. When a government says to the military, and you guys will know about this in history, when a government says to the military, there's the people over there protesting, go over there and shoot them. And the government and the soldiers lay their guns down and walk over and say, we're with them. It's over for government then. You have no legitimacy and no control. Historically, that's happened time and time again. When that happens, the government's got to get out of the country because they're done. They're going to get their heads chopped off. That's what you're going to see at some point in Europe. At some point, you're going to see some of these countries where the government says, okay, go shoot them or abuse them or beat them or do whatever. And at some point, the police are going to say, we can't feed our families either. The military is going to say, we can't feed our families either. What the hell are you talking about? You're telling us that our brothers and sisters and cousins out here are on the street because they can't feed their families and they can't survive and their jobs and industries closed down, and we can't feed our families and our jobs and industry and everything's closed down. And at some point, the soldiers drop their weapons and go and say, we're on the side with these people. And at that point, the government has no legitimacy. The government falls and you have revolution of some type. I think some countries are legitimately looking at that. First of all, you saw what happened with the yellow vest. France, they're going to go, those people will go ape shit. They're going to go nuts. Germany, I wouldn't even want to be in Germany. They'll burn that freaking place to the ground. What's going to happen next winter? They're really pissing the Russians off. So they are now at economic war with Russia. Russia's going to cut their gas off at some point, I suspect. It's going to do it next month for 10 days. And they'll be lucky if it ever comes back on. Might not. Russia's making money. They don't need you. And you declared war on them. Why would they? Hey, Garland, I'm going to kill you. Hey, that's not very nice. By the way, would you give me a ride home now? No, you just told me you were going to kill me. I'm not giving you a ride home. Okay, how about just out to the corner where I can catch you? But no. Would you lend me money for bus fare? Get away from me. You just told me you're going to kill me. That's what they're doing. Hey, we're going to destroy Russia. We're going to starve the Russian people. We're going to make their lives live in hell. Then they're going to overthrow Putin in the same way that a thing that happened in Libya, and they're going to ram a bayonet up his ass on TV, and they're going to slaughter him and murder him. And then we're going to say, we came, we saw, and he died. And it's going to be just like Libya. That's what they're saying to Russia. And at the same time, they're saying to Russia, oh, by the way, Russia, make sure you keep that gas and wheat coming, guys, because hey, wouldn't want our people to get cold in the wintertime. Yeah, how's that going to work out? At some point, Russia's going to say, oh, by the way, it's wintertime, isn't it? Yeah. And remember that little business about you're going to have economic war on us and you're going to overthrow our country? Yeah, well, that's about to come to a screeching halt. At some point, that bullshit's coming to a screeching halt. At some point, they're going to wake up. And Russia's going to say, you know what? We've made plans. We've got our power of the Siberia pipeline running to China. We've got our power of Siberia pipeline 2 running to China, and that's up. So we're all the gas that we're going to send to you. Yeah, we're sending to China now. We got all of our energy sold. We don't need you anymore. Goodbye. We'll be turning east. And at that point, Europe has to try to beg. At some point, they're going to say, what did we do? What can we do? And I imagine Russia will say, well, for starters, you can drop all the sanctions and give us all our money back. Okay, we'll do it. We'll drop all the sanctions, give all your money back. Okay, good. The answer is still no. Screw you. We moved on. The guy breaks up with a girl. Wait, can I do anything? Nah. Please, I want you back. And the guy says, nah, I've moved on. Or vice versa. The girl, whoever it is, says, nah, I've moved on. Nah, I don't want you anymore. It's not that I'm mad at you. I'm not mad at you, but you and I just don't work together. So I'm moving on into greener pastures, right? It isn't that, I moved on. I'm no hard feelings. You go your way, I'll go mine. Hopefully you'll find somebody, I'll find somebody. Everybody will be happy. And I think at some point, that's what Russia's going to say to Europe. This is not anymore about Europe versus Russia, about an economic war. That's all behind us now. We're not in economic. You may be in an economic war with us. We're not in an economic war with you, but we ain't doing business with you anymore. We don't need to sell you gas. We don't need to sell you energy. We've got other customers. We're moving on. Oh, no, you're in a world of crap, aren't you? Yeah, well, you have to figure a way out of that. Don't ask us. Remember, we're the bad guys. We're not allowed to play sports with you. We're not allowed to speak with you. We're not allowed to go to your opera houses. We're not allowed to do anything. Well, we don't want to anymore. Goodbye. And Russia's going to slam the door. And that's it. At that point, Europe's done. So Europe is, since we already know where that's coming, Europe's already done. Europe's already finished. It's over. And I think that they're going to find out the hard way. And, it is what it is. They should. So that's the long and short of it. NATO is a paper tiger because it doesn't have the military wherewithal to confront Russia. But even more importantly, in the medium to short term, their economy is a shambles and it is going to get much worse, which means they're not going to be able to hold together politically. The people, just as this guy said, as this Spanish lawmaker said, the people are going to start asking the same questions. How did this happen? Why don't we have a job? Germany will soon, mark my word, they're going to close down entire sectors. And Germany is 25% of the European Union's economy. When Germany sneezes, everybody else gets a headache. So what's going to happen when the German economy goes under, and it's starting to go under, and when they start shutting down entire regions? They're now rationing hot water, and they're telling people, look, your old refrigerator. They literally, is articles. Your old refrigerator is Putin's friend. You got to have a new refrigerator that's more economic. That way it doesn't use as much energy, and it doesn't help Putin by using lots of energy. What they're really saying is we're damn the hell out of energy, and we don't know what to do about it. So anything we can do, we'll tell you. Here's the thing about it. It's like so many other things. It's like recycling and stuff like that. It's like a lot of this green stuff, right? Works like this. We're going to make $1 billion off of fossil fuel. And we're going to tell you have to lower your carbon footprint. You as an individual. You got to put more air in your tires. You got to turn the heat down. You as an individual. Now, the billionaires have created an environment where they're pumping all of these stuff into the atmosphere. And they're like, uh-oh, that ain't good. We're poisoning the atmosphere. How are you going to fix it? Okay, we're still making billions of dollars of poisoning the atmosphere. Here's the plan. Your ass is going to have to act. You're going to have to lower your carbon footprint and do this and drive this kind of car and, use colder water and all these things. You've got to, well, and you say, well, let me ask you this. Are you going to stop selling as much oil? No. Are you going to stop making as much money? No. Are you going to stop pumping this oil out of the ground? No. And what are you going to do with the oil that you pump out of the ground? We're going to sell and burn every damn drop of it. Well, then how is me lowering my carbon footprint going to make a difference if you ain't going to stop pumping and burning oil? That's the game. To tell you, they create the problems. They make money off of the problems in innumerable amounts. They continue to make money off it. And they tell you as an individual must recycle and fix it. It's an individual. As a group, as the oligarchical group, they make a fortune. They keep the fortune. They continue to make the fortune. And they tell you that you have to fix the dirt. You have to clean it up behind them as an individual. Your carbon footprint as an individual. Let me ask you this. What about the carbon footprint of the U.S. military? We can't talk about that. NATO's military. Nah. Planes, ships, aircraft carriers. What about their carbon footprint? Shh, we're not talking about that. You just go get yourself another freaking, stop using those plastic straws because that's more plastic. We hurting the environment. I'm not saying that we shouldn't recycle or we shouldn't be concerned with the environment. I'm saying you should understand the reality that you got people making a fortune off of fossil fuel. They're going to continue to pump fossil fuel. Joe Biden, as he tells you to lower your carbon footprint, is in Saudi Arabia asking them to pump more for carbon fuel. So don't believe that this guy's out here to stop the use of carbon fuel. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. In my opinion, we should find a way where we got renewable energy, period, whether it's the sun and, some kind of way they can use the tides. If they were serious about that, they could do it, by the way. If they were serious about it, they could do it, but they're not, so they won't. There's plenty of power from rivers and all kinds of things. If they really wanted to, they would invest the time to utilize the natural environment, to utilize the natural movements of the earth, and to create energy. But that ain't what they want to do. Don't even fool yourself for a second. And by telling you that you have to do various and sundry things, it's a way for them to pretend that they're acting on it, but they're not. They're just still making as much money as ever. And that's not to say you shouldn't do it, but you should know the reality that as much oil as they pump out of the ground is as much as they're going to burn. If it comes out of the ground, they're going to burn it. If it don't stop coming out of the ground, they ain't going to stop burning it. So the only way to have a lower carbon footprint, the only true way to have a lower carbon footprint would be for them to pump less oil out of the ground, because every ounce that they pump out of the ground, they're going to burn. And if they're pumping more, they're going to burn that too. So don't fool yourself in thinking that there will be a lower carbon footprint when they're not pumping less oil out of the ground, because every drop that gets pumped will get burned. Okay, let's continue. And we don't have that much farther to go. So what we're looking at with NATO now is, the bottom line is, as I said earlier, a military, an army runs on its belly. You probably heard that before. They got to be full. They got to be feeling good and all that. Okay, now let's take that from the army to the country. A government holds power because the people have a reasonable standard of living, or because they can force them to do what the hell they want them to do. Man, by the end of this summer, the people are going to be in the streets to hell. And I think that here's what I think Russia's doing too. And this is all part of it. It's going to weaken NATO even more. You may have heard the terms, whenever you hear about the Russian military, you're going to hear this term cauldron. An old military tactic of the Russians, right? You surround your enemy, right? You call it a cauldron. You put them in a pot, you surround them. And then what do you do with the cauldron? You slowly turn the heat up on that pot. You lob artillery in there. You cut them off so they can't get food. They're like the heat gets turned up. They get more and more miserable till either one of two things. You're going to destroy them or they're going to give up. But you surround them, cut them off, and you build cauldrons, right? I think that's what they're doing with economically. The same tactic with the EU. Think about Germany. Germany's rolling along, la 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 la. We're getting lots of gas from Russia, and we're sending weapons, and we're saying terrible things about Russia, and we're living off their gas at the same time. And I think Russia's like, yeah, you think that's going to keep going? Russia's like, you hate us, you can't stand us, you're sending weapons to kill us, you're saying terrible things about how we must fall, and you're living off our gas. You think that's going to continue? Best of luck with that, buddy. So what did Russia do? They first started off saying we got to cut the gas down by 60% going into Germany. Why is that? Because we need some parts that are coming from Siemens, which is a German company. They've been sent to Canada, and they're not coming back because Canada said because of the sanctions. So now Germany's like, holy crap. The Germany's were all over that, trying to get that fixed. Now Russia just said, oh, by the way, we've got some pre-scheduled maintenance, and 10 days in July, no gas whatsoever. We're completely cutting it off. And then this just what just happened today. Ha 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 ha. Let me share this with you. You might want to see this one. Again, they're turning up the heat in the cauldron. Let's take a look. Russia halts transit of Kazakh oil to Europe. Supply via a major Caspian pipeline has been stopped due to technical violations, according to news agency Sputnik. I could get into that, but suffice to say, they're turning up the heat in the cauldron. That's all that is. Oh, by the way, next month, 10 days, 1/3 of the month, you're not getting a drip of oil. So don't even think that you're going to fill up your storage tanks for the winter. That ain't happening. Right? Oh, crap. We've got some problems with this oil line. You guys need a lot of oil, don't you? Yeah. Well, you said you were going to cut our oil out anyway. So this probably won't bother you much. We're turning your damn oil off. Out of this one pipeline, yeah. We just can't see our way clear to keep sending oil through that pipeline. Technical violations, legal violations, things of that nature. And so bottom line, yes, ain't getting no oil. Bye, adios. We'll let you know. See you later. We'll give you a call when we get a chance to turn that oil back on, cranking up the heat in the cauldron. Europe is one big energy cauldron. And as they take a little bit away, they took 60% of the gas going to Europe away. Now they're turning them off oil pipelines. They're turning up the heat in the cauldron economically. And so what's happening now is Europe is going to be less and less. Slow. They're not shutting them down. They're not shutting them off. They're not saying, screw you, we're shutting off their energy. They're saying, oh, we got problems. We got to cut your gas down by 60%. Oh, man, technical issues with this pipeline. Unfortunately, we're going to have to cut it off. And it ain't going to be the last pipeline. And Germany is right in saying we don't know when it's going to come back on. Germany is now saying they're going to cut these pipelines off, and we don't know if they're coming back on. They are correct. I don't know if they're coming back on either. And and Germany's trade unions and Germany's business leaders are saying, look, if they cut that gas off and they don't, entire industries are just going to shut down for good. Game over. These gigantic industries that we have, these chemical industries, these car industries, these various finely engineered metal things that we make. Yeah. Bosch, what have you. Yeah, some of these industries are gone for good. How's that going to work for the Western supply chain? So, the Russians are saying, you know what? Boy, you guys got it bad over there, but sucks to be you. Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember you. Last phone call I got from you guys, what you were telling us that you were waging economic war. You're going to destroy our country and you're going to overthrow our governments. Yeah. Well, call us when you need some more oil because you ain't getting none. And so what they're going to do is, I think they cut it down to a trickle. They cut it down to a trickle going into the winter so that the Europeans don't quite have enough to make it. You cut it down. You don't cut it off. You know what it's like? It's like you've probably heard of this old torture where they take a person and they put a glass of water just out of their reach and they chain them to a wall or something where they can see the water. And they come bring a glass of ice water and they put it just out of their reach. So, but you just can't quite get it. And then you die, and you go through hell, right? That's what they're doing. I think they're not going to cut them off. They're going to cut it down to a trickle where it's just enough that it ain't enough. And then they're going to catch hell because they're not going to be out, but they're going to have to. Then what happens? The government has to ration it. Now you're forcing the government to do things. And they're going to say, why are you rationing? We don't have enough to keep warm. Government, you're rationing. Keep turning up the heat on the cauldron. That's what it is. As they lower the energy, the amount of energy going into Europe, they're turning up the heat on that cauldron in Europe. The heat is going on the politicians, but mainly the cauldron truly is not the puppets. The cauldron is the puppet masters. They're turning up the heat on Washington, D.C. because by go after Washington, D.C., they're not going to attack. They're not going to send in a brigade of Russians to come across the Potomac River and attack Washington, D.C. No, 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 no. They're attacking their alliance, and they're not physically attacking their alliance with militarily. They're attacking them intellectually, really. They're really attacking them economically and saying, we're going to set you up in a situation where your citizens are furious at your government, and they're going to turn your government over, and they're going to bring in a government that is not into this bullshit. And I think it's smart, and I think it's going to work. And I think there's a lot of pain. Man, I put it like this. I ain't planning on traveling to Europe next winter, because it ain't going to be a fun place to be. And but long before then, I think the European people are going to wake up long before then, and they're going to say, what's going on? And their leaders are going to say, well, the good news is, you're still making Putin upset by riding bicycles and walking around smelling and being filthy because you can only take a hot shower once a week. Oh, by the way, you can't even do that because the entire industry that you work in closed down and you don't have a job and you're homeless. They ain't going to have no answers for the people. And the people are going to be hot, and they're going to tear Europe limb from one end to the other. And there's going to be a new, I'll put it like this. There's a corrupt, inept, elite ruling class. That elite ruling class may look to be turned over, something like that. Because there's a lot you can do, but NATO is through. And I don't see how NATO and the EU survive the economic catastrophe that's coming. People are pissed now, and they ain't seen nothing yet. What happens if and when the Russians can turn that heat up on that cauldron? All right, let's look and see. We got some people who did some super chats. I want to always, as always, I appreciate the super chats. Detroit Rock City says, to quote the Duran, these people have no reverse gear. Exactly. The neocons have no reverse gear, but keep in mind something. Yeah, you're going forward, but when the hordes come running at you, you got to turn. The neocons will be so discredited with this. This could be the fall of the neocons. We shall see. My great fear is that the U.S. empire will escalate to a direct war once they realize they're losing badly. Valid fear. I don't believe so. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that because they know, and when you listen to Douglas McGregor, when you listen to Scott Ritter, they know right now that they can't go toe-to-toe with Russia on the Russian border. They know they'll take a hurt. First of all, let's say you go directly to toe-to-toe with Russia, right? That means it's the U.S. and Russia. That doesn't mean, let's face it, most of the military, most of the militaries of the countries in Europe are worthless or waste or nothing. So what's going to happen? Keep in mind something. They have hypersonic missiles. The U.S. has no way to defend against hypersonic missiles, and hypersonic missiles that have like a 1,900-kilometer range, which means you can't bring your ships within range, and that's pretty broad range. And they can sink them because what are you going to do? You have no defense. You're going to get hit by this missile coming in at 10,000 miles an hour. That's going to do some nasty damage. You're going to get some real serious trouble. So do you want to go up against a country that has hypersonic missiles and you don't? You're going to, your blue Navy is going to take a hit. Yeah, and you're going to take some, you're going to take some powerful hits. I'm not saying the Russians aren't going to take some hits, but the United States is not ready for the kind of hits it's going to take from Russia, for the powerful hits. Not to mention this, China already knows that they're next. It is possible, maybe even likely, that the United States were to go to war with Russia or declare war on Russia, that China would join in and declare war on the United States, and you'd have China, the U.S. versus China and Russia, which means it goes nuclear and we're all dead. And they know that. They know that. They already know. We'll fix the Russians. Well, wait a minute. The Russians have more nuclear weapons than we do. So, and the Russians have the Sarmat. They've got hypersonic. Now they are in the process of deploying hypersonic nuclear weapons. That's problematic. So so I don't believe they're going to do that. If they look, let me tell you the bottom line. Look at Libya, look at Serbia. If the US empire, forget NATO, if the US empire believed that they could defeat Russia militarily, they'd already done it. They'd have started off that way. They don't do this bull crap and proxy wars to people that they think they can fight them. They're doing it because they know they can't. That's the reality. I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I don't think they're going to do it. Oh, let's see. Garland, you would be great on camping fishing trip. The campfire night will be a rip-roaring time with your storytelling ability. Oh, well, thanks a lot. And I love fishing. I'm a diehard fisherman, and I've done a lot of camping and stuff like that. So that would be a blast. They'll just go nuclear because they're sick. I don't think that's going to happen. All right. And if we look at Rockfin, anybody? Oh, okay. Here we go. Jim Garrison tipped and said, Garland, it's like Putin is playing 3D chess and the West is playing checkers. You're exactly right. They're playing tiddlywinks. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They have no long-term plan. They don't have a long-term plan. They don't have a short-term plan. They don't have a plan. The only thing they're doing is trying to go with the narrative. And you know what? When the people, that's why I said NATO's screwed, the EU's screwed. When the people can't eat, they don't want to hear a narrative. You can't eat a narrative. Hey, I went to the grocery store. The guy said $200. I said, hey, I got a narrative. He said, buddy, you got an empty hand. That's where they are. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. Let's see. How far can the hypersonic missiles go? Can they hit California and Arizona? Keep in mind something. Someone asked that. Russia has subs with nuclear missiles on them. So if they wanted to hit Arizona, they just fire from off the coast of the U.S. They'd fire off the coast from the East Coast, the West Coast. They don't have a problem firing nuclear weapons right now without hypersonic missiles. Apparently this fall, they're going to deploy hypersonic missiles to submarines. So they've got hypersonic missiles. They've got regular missiles that, trust me, if it was a nuclear war, none of us are making it out of that alive. But I don't think that, just don't believe that's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I don't, because NATO, if they could they're vicious. The U.S. empire is vicious. If they could take you out, they'd kill you as soon as they could. They know they can't, so they're playing this proxy war game, and it's just not going to work. And they don't know what the hell they're doing. And NATO's done from the inside out, finished. Thank everybody. Don't forget. I don't know if this does any good. I don't know if anybody likes this channel. Some people say they do. I hope it does, but don't forget, if you can help keep this thing going. GarlandNixon.com patreon.com/Garland Nixon. If you can do $1, $3, $5, $100 a month, every single thing helps. Also, I've in the show notes, I've got my PayPal information there. Just my email address, garlandin@gmail.com. Also, make sure you smash that like button, as Alex Christoforus always says. My favorite channel, of course, the Duran. I'm sure a lot of people here like the Duran. And make sure you go to rockfin.com, ROKFIN, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. Please, if you can become a member of my channel, it's no cost on Rockfin. If you can become a subscriber, it's $9.99 a month. That would really help. I would really appreciate that. And that $9.99 a month will allow you to see my premium stuff, but it will allow you to see any of the premium stuff on Rockfin. So thanks a lot. I certainly appreciate it. Yeah, everybody loved the Durand. I was lucky enough when I was in London. Last time I was in London, I met Alexander Mercouris. We went to a Julian Assange event, and he was one of the speakers, and Assange's family was one of the speakers. And let me tell you, Alexander Mercouris is every bit the nice person. I met his wife, beautiful, wonderful woman, just absolutely salt of the earth. And Alexander Mercouris is as nice a person, as kind a person, as decent a person as he appears to be on his channel. He appears to be a very smart guy and a nice guy and a very cultured individual. He is every bit the wonderful guy in person that he appears to be on his channel. I think the world of Alexander Mercouris, and I love his channel. And of course, Alex. I never met Alex, but he seems like a good guy. I truly believe all the Europeans are under heavy threats from the U.S. Soon one of them will run to Russia for help. Europe is not so racist. You may be wrong. You may be right, Raphael Legod. You may be right. They are under a lot of pressure, because keep in mind, It's vassal states. They don't have any sovereignty. People are waking up to realize they have no sovereignty. They do what they're told. And the European people ain't going to be so happy about that. Anything else? That's it, I think. Oh, let's see. Harry Abley. I was going to say alibi. What's the most logical institution left in the USA? Good. Yeah. The institutions have been so taken over that I wish I had the answer to that. I wish I had the answer to that. I don't think there's a logical institution. I think they've been taken over by neoliberal forces one by one, from academia to, religion, for God's sake. So I don't know that there is a logical institution left. I know this is a logical institution. People like us, people like the Duran, people like some of the great channels out here that are working over on Rockfin, The Last American Vagabond, my main man, Ryan Christian, think the world of him. I like Max Blumenthal. They do great stuff over at the Gray Zone. There's a lot of good stuff out here. Orinoco Tribune. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Orinoco Tribune. That's a good web. That's a great website. They a lot of stuff on South America. Popularresistance.org. Margaret Flowers runs that. There's a lot of stuff out here. There's places that you can find stuff if you know where to look and how to look. So I go to antiwar.com, although they piss me off occasionally because they're libertarians, and as libertarians, they hate the left. So they'll put some stuff up sometime that makes me want to scream. It'll be something about one of the Cuba or Latin America, one of the lefty Latin American countries, and they will put some crap up that's like, John Bolton probably wrote it. And so I like antiwar.com, but the libertarians, unfortunately, who hate the left sometimes, cannot be unbiased when it comes to the left. I try to be unbiased when it comes to any country because I believe in sovereignty. I believe countries have a right to decide how they want to run their country. And if Viktor Orban wants to be a conservative right-wing country, well, damn it, those people vote for him. He's their country. And if Cuba wants to be communist, if Venezuela and Nicaragua wants to be socialist country, damn it, I support their sovereignty and their right to choose their way and let the trips fall where they may. If it works for them, good. If it doesn't, it's their choice. And that's what you don't find with some people. They're right and they got to hate the left. They're left, they got to hate the right. They cannot respect the sovereignty of other countries and simply say, I'll choose the direction I want my country to go. You choose the direction you want yours to go. And I'm not going to try to hinder you. You don't try to hinder me, and we'll find out. And unfortunately, on antiwar.com, that don't happen. And they'll put some bull crap about Cuba or Nicaragua or Venezuela or one of the left-leaning countries that just sickens me. And I'm like, why are you putting this CIA propaganda on an anti-war site? And it's because there are libertarians who simply hate the left and will be happy, thrilled to go along with the filthiest, nastiest neocons on earth and go against their so-called a belief in sovereignty, and will go along with this liberal interventionism that says, well, this country's got socialism, so therefore we have a right to do something to stop their evil socialism. No, we got a right to do nothing, let them live their damn lives. And so that's my only issue with antiwar.com. But at any rate, but they have a lot of good stuff there too. So you got to pick and choose. I'm not saying it's a terrible site. I go there every day. I find some good stuff, but I just hold my nose when I'm weeding through there because I know I'm going to find something that really stinks most days, that doesn't go along with what their ostensible values are. They sure as hell don't go along with my values. Sovereignty, stability, right? International stability. And part of international stability is recognizing the sovereignty of other countries. Nicaragua can be any damn kind of country they want to. And I don't have a right to say Daniel Ortega is a dictator simply because I don't like his country, whatever he's chosen. I'm not saying I don't. Fine. Nicaragua can be anything they want to. I tell you what I don't like. I don't like neoliberalism. That's for damn sure. I don't like, in America, we've got two versions. We've got the liberal neoliberals and we've got the conservative neoliberals. That's the Republican Party. They're both the same, owned by the same people doing the same thing. And again, I'll end it up by saying, and that's neoliberalism is what is destroying, tearing NATO apart. It's going to kill NATO. It's going to starve and just destroy the standard of living for the Europeans and a lot of Americans. And maybe that'll wake some people up, huh? Maybe that'll wake some people up. Last but Rockfin. And we see great show. As always, I worry about my friends in Italy, but it sounds like Germany is in worse trouble. Christine Miller. Yeah. Oh my God, Germany's so screwed. But Italy's got a lot of industry too. And look, the Europe, maybe it's what they need. Maybe Europe needs a wake up call. Maybe if this didn't happen, they'd end up in a nuclear war. This may be the thing that saves them from a nuclear war. They may wake up and say, the US, get the hell out of here. We're no longer going to be your vassal state. You're starving us to damn death. Could be. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate it. My God, it's 11:30 and I got to get up in the morning. Peace. I am